Thank you very much. And excellent points. Again, my name is Bob Swindell, and I head up the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance. A lot of my comments will apply to my 7 peers, or 6 peers, in the Southeast Florida region. I will draw on some specific examples that are Broward specific, but some of them are pilot programs that we hope will replicate around the entire state of Florida. I do want to thank Marcella and Jim Early for the invitation today. One of the things that is very reassuring from a business perspective is that the planning efforts that are being done throughout South Florida and Florida as a state with 6 pillars and the 750 planning, the common nexus to that in Southeast Florida is Jim Early, and I couldn't think of a better individual to be that nexus. The premise for 6 pillars is by 2030, so in 17 years, we'll have 5 to 7 million more people in Florida. And where are those people going to live? Where are they going to work? How are they going to get around? And it's an important component that is being, part of the 750 planning. When I first joined economic development, and that was about 10 years ago, the paradigm at the time was you recruited the companies and the jobs would follow. And that was the way economic development individuals worked. That transitioned about 5 or 6 years ago. And the paradigm now is, if you have the workforce, the companies come to you. And I could cite a list of companies, but most recently technology companies. We have Research in Motion as a 400-person R&D facility in Sunrise, Florida. The reason they came to South Florida was because of Motorola's long-term investment in employees and engineers in Florida. So that's just one example of the importance of education and a well-trained workforce. It's drawing the companies. I wanted to just touch on, in the 5 minutes I've got, the 3 things we hear most often when companies are thinking about expanding or relocating to Florida. And again, these are pretty similar across the state of Florida. The first question we typically get is, what's the source of our future workforce? Are there well-prepared employees, and can you provide us data that proves what you're telling us is accurate? The second thing that comes up most often is, how does local education successfully prepare not only my children as an executive or decision maker for the company, but equally important, my employees? Where are their children going to go to school, and what kind of platform or infrastructure are they going to be able to develop a successful career moving forward with the education that's available to them in South Florida? And then the third one is, what are the local options for continuous learning, future training for the current workforce? I think as you look at careers and how folks transition from one career to the next, the 40 or 50 years with the same company in the same type of industry is not going to be the norm moving forward. So how do we provide solutions for that? So I'll touch on these in sort of the opposite order that I just listed them out to you. First is continuous training. I think that when we talk about an investment in education, dollars are important, but in my mind equally important is innovation and how are we updating how we're educating and providing learning to students, not only students in pre-K through PhD, but also then students who are in a career transition, so workforce training, technology academies. We understand there's different paths for different students and where their strengths lie, but they are equally important. What I do see in Southeast Florida colleges, universities, and workforce development boards is a lot of investment in the continuous learning opportunities. I know that Broward College, as an example, has a manufacturing training program that helps people that are in transition for their careers gaining those skills that are seen in high-tech manufacturing facilities in Southeast Florida. And we're seeing that particular sector really flourish right now in Southeast Florida. They tend to be smaller manufacturing facilities, 50 to 60 employees, not large production lines like you may have pictured if you're thinking about automobile manufacturing or other heavy industry manufacturing. The wave of the future manufacturing, medical devices, aviation component parts, those type of manufacturing companies tend to be smaller, more agile. They need a workforce that can respond to that. Also logistics. As we're seeing the infrastructure in our ports, Port of Miami, Port Everglades, as those ports expand and are able to bring in more cargo and more materials, logistics is an important part of how those products not only get then distributed throughout the state of Florida, but then how do they move on to other parts of the country. So again, another area that our local colleges are focused on providing training, and it's adult education training as much as it is for current students. Public and private education choices for children. You know, a big part of what we have to do, and you're here today, so it means that you're engaged and you're involved. What I would ask you to do is help the economic development organizations, help our school boards change the narrative. You know, we tend to be our own worst enemy. We have a lot of success stories that we can tout in South Florida when it comes to our education system. I'm a graduate of Boyd Anderson High School, a public high school in Broward County. I'm going to touch on a program that a couple of other alumni that are now principals in Broward County from my high school. But we have a lot of success stories, and we don't capture those, and we don't, you know, we need to move the narrative from what is a false perception to what is accurate and what the data supports. And that we've got a dynamic school system throughout South Florida, and while we always have room for improvement, there are a lot of great things that are going on right now. I wanted to touch on two of those that I'm familiar with in Broward County. The first is that it's called the Citrix Academy, and this is a joint effort with Citrix and Broward College at their North Campus. And it's providing students that are either seniors in high school or graduates of high school that want to go into a less than a 2-year program, but they'll actually graduate with a 2-year degree and also a certification in Citrix technology that allows them to deploy that technology and work in groups, and it focuses on the soft skills. And what I do hear from employers is there is a soft skills gap. The other program that is really phenomenal, and Broward County is the pilot for this for the state of Florida, is a program called the LEO program, and it's linking education with employment outcomes. And they have 2 classes of 6th graders at Apollo Middle School and 2 classes of 9th graders. This is the first year for the program at MacArthur High School. Todd LePace is the principal at MacArthur, one of the most innovative principals, I think, in South Florida. And we're fortunate that the sponsors for this LEO program are, you know, Brian Cunningham, who's an executive with Citrix, but then also David Armstrong, the president of Broward College, and Bob Brunsey, who's our superintendent of schools in Broward County. 2 of, I think, the most innovative educational leaders in the nation that we have in South Florida. But this LEO program is getting these students involved in project management. Starting at the 9th grade, they'll go from 9th grade to seniors in high school in this class together, and they focus on things like, you know, working in groups. How do you start a project? Determine if the data suggests you need to take on a project. How do you pull the pieces together? How do you make presentations? How do you communicate your concerns and your ideas successfully? Those soft skills we don't emphasize enough, and that is the gap that I'm hearing from a lot of the businesses in Broward County that we're not solving. So LEO program is an innovative program that will hopefully capture that and provide those 9th graders when they graduate with not only certificated training, but also the skills to either go to a technical academy or go on to college or university. The 6th graders are starting this program in middle school, and I've talked to Todd LePace, the principal at MacArthur, and he said, you know, we may have to retool this entire program when those 6th graders come to MacArthur as 9th graders, and that's a hope. I mean, they want to innovate, and they want to be able to take on the challenge of having these 6th graders that have been in the program for 3 years, and what is their outlook going to be like when they hit 9th grade as freshmen in high school. So we're really excited about that program. And the third thing that I talked about was future innovative workforce. You know, it's been touched on before, but as we diversify Florida's economy and go into industries like medical devices, aerospace, aviation, logistics, information technology. I mentioned Research in Motion as a wireless communications company. I've talked about Citrix, but we have a phenomenal cluster of technology companies in Southeast Florida. We have a great working relationship with our partners at the Business Development Board and the Beacon Council, our 2 peer groups in South Florida and the most southern part of Southeast Florida. But we have 3 programs we're working on, and Ed Massey is an integral part of one of those, and that's Life Sciences South Florida. He touched on the fact that the first phase of that was bringing the academic leaders with the business leaders and having a very open discussion. Where are we lacking with our fresh outs? When a student comes from one of our programs, what are they lacking as a business? And the businesses were equally frank in saying, well, here's what you need to do. Here's where you need to tweak your curriculum to improve the quality of your graduates. Those conversations are ongoing, but that was sort of the critical start. And when both academic leaders like Ed and President Rosenberg agreed to be a part of that process, and it's making a huge difference, and the companies are beginning to see the changes because they're now involved in curriculum development. Another important phase of that is then marketing and raising the visibility of life science occupations and companies in Southeast Florida. The second is called the Tech Gateway, and it's promoting Southeast Florida as the technology gateway to the Americas. You know, we have a great story to tell in South Florida, and that the first IBM PC was invented in Southeast Florida. The very first smartphone, the Simon, was a joint effort of IBM, Bell South, and Motorola. That first smartphone, the predecessor of the iPhone and all the others, came from South Florida. Again, we don't communicate that narrative very effectively, and we need to tell that story because it's a powerful story. And when my colleagues were out in Silicon Valley a few months ago sharing not only that story but with the companies that are here in South Florida, you know, we've got to raise that awareness. And that, again, that's a regional initiative. And then the third is our South Florida, your Global Business Connection. And that's how we market Southeast Florida to the rest of the world, that we really are a gateway to the Americas, and that a Southeast Florida location is ideal if you want to build an international business. I'll close it at that, but again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you.